our FDP on role of materials in electric vehicle. Uh, I take pleasure in introducing today's speaker. I will just read out some of her achievements. Uh, Dr. M.B. Sahana did her MSc in Physics from Mangalore University, India in 1997. Later, she began her research on semiconductor metal transition of vanadium oxide thin films grown by MOCVD toward her doctoral degree program at Materials Research Center in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. She got her PhD degree in 2004. Later, she joined as a postdoctoral fellow at Physics Department of Stockholm University, Sweden, where her research focus was on guiding of highly charged ion through highly ordered nanocapillaries prepared by photo-assisted electrochemical etching. Later, from 2005 to 2010, she was in the Department of Physics and Astronomy, Wayne State University, Detroit, MI, USA, as a postdoctoral researcher, where she developed expertise on material aspects for thin film lithium ion batteries, band gap engineering in oxide materials, and dye synthesized sensitized solar cell. She also worked on Raman spectroscopy and electron microscopy on VAC31 proteins in Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Currently, she is at Research for Automotive Energy Materials International Advanced Research Center for Powder Metallurgy and New Materials as scientist. Her research focus at ARCI is to develop of active materials for lithium ion batteries and LIB development using research pilot plant for electric and hybrid vehicles. So I present you Dr. M.B. Sahana. Over to you, madam.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pavan, for a nice introduction. And good morning, everyone. It's nice to give a online presentation. Today, I'll be talking about the importance of the electrode microstructure. So I basically come from Center for Automotive Energy Materials, which is one of the centers in International Advanced Research Center for Powder Metallurgy and New Materials, which is shortly called as ARCI. To just start, before starting the talk, I'll give a brief introduction to our institute. Our main head office is in Hyderabad, and we have almost 10 centers in ARCI, and 8 of them are in Hyderabad, and 2 of them are, that is Center for Fuel Cell Technology, and 1 minute, I'll put a laser point, and the Center for Automotive Energy Materials. These 2 centers are at Chennai, located in IITM Research Park. And coming to our center where I work, which is a Center for Automotive Energy Material, we have 3 main areas. We work on materials development and the technology development in these 3 areas. I work on lithium ion battery, where our focus is to develop the material and fabricate the cells and the modules. And we have an MOU with the companies where we will test our cells and modules with them. And we also work on magnetic materials and thermoelectric materials. Now today I'll be basically give the work on lithium ion battery. So the outline of the talk will be, I'll give a brief introduction for lithium ion battery and what are the parts of lithium ion battery and the cell. Then what are the, see, when we have a cell or a battery, there are various levels of fabrications, starting from materials to module. I'll briefly focus on the cell fabrication. And then the one of the important thing is that with respect to material is a formation of a solid electrolyte interface. With that, I will focus on, and what are the desired characteristics of the electrodes, and then move on to the next technology, which is a solid state electrolyte. So I'll give briefly the difference between electrode morphology in liquid electrolyte lithium-ion cells and the solid-state electrolyte battery. So I know in previous talks, you would have heard about and you would have listened or learned about the functioning of lithium-ion battery. You would have seen this kind of figure, which shows a cathode material coated on a cathode current collector. That is this purple line, a purple block over here is a current collector, and the anode, which is usually a graphite. These are the layers of graphite, which is coated over the anode current collector, which is copper. And you have also would have learned there is a separator, which is that is this center portion of it, which is soaked in the electrolyte, which allows the transportation of lithium from cathode to anode and vice versa. Now, if you see that this is a couple of unit cells of a lithium cobalt oxide, which is a cathode material. You would have learned that during the discharging process, cobalt, which is a transition metal oxide, which can have various oxidation states, give rise to one electron, which goes to the current collector and to the outer circuit. And lithium becomes lithium ion and it deintercalates, that is, it going out of the layers is called deintercalation, and lithium ion passes through the electrolyte and goes to the anode. And meanwhile, cobalt will change its oxidation state from 3+ to 4+. But now if you can see that this is a couple of unit cells. One unit cell, if you see, it's around 14 angstrom in the c-axis. So lithium cobalt oxide, basically the primitive unit cell will have only 12 atoms. In that, as only 3 lithium. So one lithium can maximum give you 1 electron. So one unit cell can only give 3 electrons. That's way less, right? So basically 1 ampere current means if you see a battery, the marking here, you can see here, this the blue one down, it's 2.2 ampere hours. So to the 2.2 ampere hour, the meaning of that is this battery can give you 2.2 amperes for 1 hour. So you think of the number of electrons that needs to go into that, or number of lithium cobalt oxide molecules that needs to go into the structure. Because 1 ampere current is 6 into 10 to the power 18 electrons flowing per second. So we need this much to flow for 1 full hour. So now if you see the average capacity, I believe you would have learned about the capacity in the previous classes, right? Previous talks, right? So basically the meaning is here, 1 gram of a material, it can give you 150 milliampere per 1 hour. So now, for this kind of cell, we need around 10 gram of the cathode material alone. That is, for 1.5 ampere hour cell, we need this cathode material of approximately 10 gram. So now this is a 1 unit cell. Now, so this will be looking like this powders. Okay, this is an example of a powder of a cathode material. Similarly, we will be having the anode powder, and now these powders have to be connected to the current collector. We cannot just stick a powder onto the current collector. So we need binders, and also it's known that all these cathode materials that are known today, that may be layered oxides like lithium cobalt oxide or lithium manganese oxide, lithium nickel oxide, or the derivatives of that, or lithium ferrous phosphate, they are all like semiconductors. Their conductivity is not very good. As you can see here, when you want the charging and discharging to happen, the electron from these cells or these cathode material, it has to go all the way to the cathode current collector. what here we are showing is only a couple of angstrom, but actual thickness of the electrode, these powders once coated over the current collector, is around 100 micrometer. So the one at this end, which is around 100 micrometer away from the current collector, the electron has to pass through all the way from here to this. So the conductivity should be very good. So to do that, we will be having what is called a conductive additives, which is usually used as a carbon black. Now that is about the current I have talked about. Now let's see, so by increasing this material, both cathode and the anode material, we can increase the total capacity of the cell. Now, whether you take 1 unit cell or 10 gram of the material, voltage is always constant. Voltage is basically the chemical potential difference of lithium between the cathode and the anode. So whether in this kind of configuration, the voltage what you can get is around 3.7 volts. That is the average voltage. And now if you see the Tesla Roadster electric vehicle car, the voltage what it has is around 360 volts and the current is 165 ampere hour. That means that it should be able to give 165 ampere current for 1 full hour. So none of the cathode materials, anode materials, what we use is always either a lithium metal or a graphite. So the potential that is usually fixed in commercial. Whereas the cathode, depending upon the requirement, we will be changing from lithium manganese, nickel or cobalt or the derivatives of it. The voltage difference between these two doesn't go beyond 4.5. So, but what voltage we require is around 360 volts for electric vehicles such as Tesla. Now, how do we get that? So we have what is called like cells and modules and the packs. So this is the basic unit. Cell is a basic unit, which I'll be talking today about this cells. Now, when we put cells in series and parallel together, the voltage as well as you can increase the capacity. That is a module. And then when we put modules together, that is a pack. I think this regarding modules and packs also, I think you would have learned it in previous days classes, presentations. So basically the electric car Tesla from USA, it has 6,831 3.5 volt 2.6 milliampere hour cells. All these cells are put in parallel and series connection can give you this kind of voltage. Now, I'll be presenting today mainly about the cell. So let us open up this cell and see what it is there. Now, this cell, a lithium ion cell, you can see here that this is the cup, this is the cover here. The black outermost line is a cover, which is insulated inside through some coatings. So this is just a can. And now if you see the layers here, the color here, the blue line here, that corresponds to a current collector, which is aluminum, which is a metallic, which can easily, like the electronic conductivity is very high. And the copper, which is a current collector for anode, again, the conductivity is very good. The yellow lines here corresponds to the cathode coatings. Now I told you this is the powder. We coat it over, this is the stainless aluminum foil over here. The active material, this active material along with carbon black and binder is coated over both the sides of this aluminum foil. Both, means front and back. That corresponds to this one here. That is a yellow line here corresponds to the cathode materials that are coated on the current collector, both the sides. And the green lines corresponds to the anode material that is coated over copper on both the side. Now, for a voltage to develop, that needs to be separated. They need to be separated physically. That is this line here, the green one is a separator. And now these are wound together like the thickness of the electrode each side can be around 10 to 100 micrometer, whereas a separator is around 20 micrometer. Current collector varies from 10 to 25 micrometer. These are wound together. It might we call it as a jelly roll, and there is many rolls, I mean round sectors of it. So this is the inside of the cell. Now the whole jelly roll is soaked in the liquid electrolyte. The liquid electrolyte consists of a lithium salt dissolved in some organic solvents. The details about that I'll come in shortly. Now this is how a separator looks. This is if you magnify the separator, it has lot of micro holes over that. Through this hole, the electrolyte can pass through from cathode to anode. The lithium ion will pass through that. Now, but it physically separates. There is no short circuit between the cathode and anode because this is a thin physical insulator. It insulates the electrons cannot pass through this. And now about the liquid electrolyte, this is a salt, which is this yellow color lithium metal, and PF6 another anion. Now this is a salt, which is a solid that is dissolved in some organic liquid electrolytes, for example, the EC. So only the lithium metal, it goes into the anode and the cathode. Now, what are the materials? Is it only these materials that goes into a lithium ion cell? No, there are many other materials also. As I told earlier, there is a left hand side here, the cathode. If you magnify that, you can see that each one of them around 200 to 500 nanometer particles. This is example for lithium ferrous phosphate. And then since the conductivity of the active material is the one which participates in the redox reaction. That is, it gives lithium and electrons, and it takes lithium and lithium ion and the electrons. And the conductive additives, usually carbon black, which is quite good in electronically means it can conduct electrons from the current collector to the active material. So if you magnify that, it looks like this. Now these materials are coated over the current collector aluminum foils. Now these are all powders, whether it is carbon black or LiFePO4. So we need something to bind them together. That is a binder. And again, this is also a solid. So what we need to do is we have to dissolve this binder in the solvent here. You can see to the right hand side, that is solvent is N-methyl-2-pyrrolidine. We call shortly it as NMP. These three things are mixed together and coated over the current collector on aluminum. That is, the cathode is coated on aluminum, and anode, which is graphite, which is little larger particles around 20 micrometer. Again, since these are large particles, there will not be a conductivity between one particle to another particle. So we'll have again here also a conductive additive carbon black. To put them together, we need a binder, which is PVDF, and that is coated over the copper. Then that is separated by a monomer polypropylene separator, which allows the electrolyte, but not the, it separates cathode and the anode. And these things put together in a can, which gives you, which is also, which is an aluminum can. Now we have to make sure that this aluminum can is electronically or insulated from the whole set of that, for which, I mean, both from the cathode and the anode. So we use another separators. So now, since we have seen that the working potential of the cathode and anode is somewhere from 2.8 volt to anywhere it can go up to 4.2 to 4.3 volts. So in this voltage, when there is a lot of chemical reactions taking place inside the cell, all these materials, starting from the active materials to inactive material, all the materials should be chemically stable in the operating voltage window. Now, so if you see about the lithium ion batteries, there are three things: internal properties, which depends only on the material, that is the crystal structure, how stable its crystal structure during the lithium intercalation and deintercalation. And there are external properties. Let's just out what are the internal properties and what are external properties. The good thing about a lithium ion battery is it can be assembled in a discharge state, unlike other batteries. A discharge state is lithium is there in the cathode, that is as a lithium cobalt oxide, and graphite, which is an anode, doesn't have any lithium in that. So the voltage difference between the two is below 2.8, or like it's actually open circuit voltage is couple of millivolts. So it's basically assembled in discharge state. So it is very easy to handle. Well, the only problem is it degrades above 4.5 volts and below 3.0 volts. So we have equipped with the control circuits. And if you go above 4.5 volts, many times lithium ion converts into lithium metal, which is not good. So now let's see here the cell potential, capacity, and energy density. These are intrinsic to the positive and negative electrode. It's intrinsic to cathode and anode. Whereas cycle life and the lifetime and the safety, they are extrinsic. Cycle life, it depends upon the nature of interface. I'll come to how many types of interfaces are there in a lithium ion battery. And the safety also depends upon the stability of the electrode material and the interface. Interface plays a very crucial role in determining the characteristics of a lithium ion cell. Now, if you see a lithium ion battery, you have listened about the modules and packs. This is one of the lithium ion battery module, which goes into Nissan electric vehicle. So we need to have their cell to cell, how the charging and discharging voltage need to be controlled. And we will be having a thermal management, pack level controlling. And then comes, if you open one of these packs, then there is a cell. This is an example of a lithium ion pouch cell. Now this is, here we need to make sure that there is a temperature and current, there is no temperature and current heterogeneous. And yes, and the quality of the electrode should be very good, and contact between the electrodes should be very good. Now, if you see one of the cell, there are this many interfaces. Now, at the center portion of this here to the left hand side, left on the top, this electrolyte will come into contact between all the materials, that is whether it is active material or inactive material. Electrolyte will have an interface between all that, that is negative current terminal, positive current terminal, separators and the active materials, and there is a cans and seals also. So now let's open it up and see how they are separated out. Now if I can see here, this is the cathode material, this one here to earth. The cathode material is coated onto both the side of the current collector, and there is a separator over here and the anode. Now let's see one of these electrode, how does it look? So this is the cathode electrode. Now the shiny part here is the current collector. The black one is the electrode. So we will today discuss about this electrode material. Now if we take the electrode material and magnify and see here, it looks like, I mean, it's a representation. There are two ways possible. One of them, this big circles corresponds to the active particle. That is, it may be lithium cobalt oxide or lithium manganese oxide or graphite. Now, these small particles here are conductive additives. That's a carbon black. Now, there are two things. For a lithium-ion battery to charge or discharge, you need both lithium ion, which has to come through the electrolyte, and we also need electron. So the conductivity of electrons as well as lithium ion should be good, and it should be accessible at a common point. Now here what happens, this is kinetically hindered. What happens is the lithium, the empty space which we call as pores, where the liquid electrolyte will come, whereas the electron will come only through the carbon black. So it has to, the conductivity from here to here is low. So this will not be a good architecture for a lithium, the electrode. Whereas in this case, where the carbon black is uniformly distributed throughout the active material, the distance between lithium ion and electron will be minimum. So there is possible both lithium and electron can easily transport into the active material. So we need this kind of structure. Now to coming back to the electrode here, they are made up of, I have briefly told in earlier slide, it has active and inactive material. Here the active material in case of cathode is lithium nickel manganese cobalt oxide or lithium cobalt oxide, and in case of anode it's a graphite powder. And we have conductive carbon and PVDF, which is a binder, and this is the binder solution, that is PVDF dissolved in NMP solution. Now let's see what are the various levels of battery fabrication. So this is our starting material. To the left side, the down here is our starting material. We need, from this we need to prepare the electrode. So when if you see the various levels of lithium ion battery fabrication is, first is the material level, and then the electrode level, and then the cell level. Now if you can see here, this electrode will have a very good theoretical capacity or energy density from 600 to 700 watt hour per kg. That's if you take only the active material, its in theoretical or intrinsic capacity or energy is very high. But then when you make from this powders, the electrode, you're adding into many inactive materials. In this case, from material to electrode, you're adding a current collector, which is around 20 micrometer thick material. It's a metal, either aluminum or a copper. So there is an inactive material. So it adds up the inactive weight. And then we are also adding carbon black, which doesn't participate in the electrochemical reaction. So again, we are increasing the inactive weight. Then there is a PVDF. Now from the electrode, so that is why the energy density or gravimetric energy density, it reduces from 600 to 400 watt hour kg. From an electrode to the cell level, when we go, we are adding up some more inactive materials like the separators, and then the lids and the covers, all that. And then the cell level to battery level, we are adding again some more inactive material. So from when we move from the material to the battery level, the factor of energy density, it reduces almost by a factor of 4. So now how to handle these materials? Now, unfortunately, all lithium ion battery materials, active materials and the electrolytes, they are extremely sensitive to moisture, mainly moisture. And once the cells are fabricated, the electrolyte, which is very sensitive to oxygen also. So all these cells have to be fabricated in a controlled humidified room. So relative humidity controlled should be less than 30% for a electrode fabrication, and then it should be less than 1%. That is the humidity level, relative humidity of this room should be less than 1% for a cell to be fabricated. Now these are the few of the instruments that are required to get a lithium ion cell. Now let's see the process steps in a lithium ion battery process. First, what we do is a slurry preparation. The left downside is a slurry consisting of the active material, the active material, that is electrode material. It may be a cathode or the anode, and carbon black and the binder. So this is a slurry. Using a coater, we coat it over a current collector, and we dry that. Now what happens is, since we have used liquid in the slurry preparation, when we dry it off, it leaves some pores. Depending upon how much percentage of the solvent we have used, it will leave the pores. So we need pores, but we need to control the amount of pores in this film, so that we compress that and reduce the porosity of that. That process is called calendering. Then this is once we calender that, we need to cut these electrodes into the length what we require. So I mean the width what we require. We call that as a slitting of the cell, slitting of the electrode. Then we need to wind the cathode, anode, and the separator. Here you can see that this is the cathode and this is the anode. These are the separators. So they are wound together alternatively. That is cathode, separator, anode. So we make a roll over it, which is called jelly roll. This is a jelly roll. And then from the current collector, we need to take the electrons out. So we need the tabs for it. So we need to do a tab welding to the current collectors. We need to have a separate tabbing for the cathode and the anode. Then we need to put them into a can. We need to do the welding of the cap of the can. That's done using a lead welding. Now these are about the pilot plant production of a lithium ion cell. But then every material what we study, we cannot make a 18650 cell or the full cell in a pilot plant, which requires around 1 to 2 kgs of a material for every batch. So we need to do in a smaller cell, where I'll come to that, what are the cells we study in smaller level. So those things are done using a glove box, where the oxygen and the moisture level here in this box is controlled to the level of approximate less than 1%. So the smaller level electrode coatings and the cells are fabricated in the glove box. Now, what are the types of cell we study? The first one, what we call, I told you that is, first thing is the intrinsic property, which is the material level, the electrochemical performance, how it works. So that we use a sewage lock cell, where just the powder alone you can take and study the intrinsic property. So when you want a electrochemical study, we need to have counter electrode and a working electrode. Counter electrode, we here usually take lithium metal, and the working electrode is, it can be a cathode or an anode. We will be having a polymer separate. And the next one is again, we have another cell, the coin cells. These cells you would have seen in many of the electronic instruments, where these are the parts of a coin cell. The next is the pouch cells, which are smaller. These pouch cells are also can be done in large size. And Nissan, for example, use only the pouch cell for their electric cars. So today I'll briefly explain how a pouch cell is fabricated and what are the things we have to take care during the pouch cell. Now, first thing is mixing of the active materials and the conductive additives like carbon black and binder. So we get what is called a slurry, which can be easily, you can flow it very easily. It's like, so but now it should not flow very easily, so that the sediment, it should not, the active material or the carbon black, it should not just the sediment. The slurry property plays a very crucial role in determining the quality of the electrode. After that, we use this slurry, we will coat it on a current collector and dry that. And as I told that, there is a calendering. Using a hot press, we calender it. So you can see that when we just coat the slurry on the current collector, the blue circles here corresponds to the active material, and the small dark small black circles corresponds to conductive carbon, and the yellow color ones corresponds to the binder. When we dry, you can see here that the distance between the active materials or the conductive carbon is quite high. So after drying, you will be having a lot of pores. So this will give rise to a low energy density, as well as it will give the impedance for the current to impedance for the electron to transfer. So we need to compress in such a way that the porosity between the particles can be controlled. So that is called calendaring. Then we need, for a pouch cell, we need to do the electrode cutting. That is, the cathodes and the anode should be cut in such a way that the sizes are what the size we desire, and there should not be any blurring at the side of the electrodes. What happens is the blurring always will give you the short circuit. It can penetrate through the separator and the cell can go bad. And the next step is basically stacking of the electrode. Now we stack it like the cathodes, the separator, anode, again the separator, cathode. So we stack the number of large number of cathode, separator, anode, and the number here is decided by how much of the nominal capacity we want. Now the full stacked jelly roll needs to be put in something, right? So that we have it as a cup. We form a cup here. This is an aluminum foil, but now you know that aluminum foil is electronically conducting. So we have a insulating polymer coated over this aluminum foil, and so that it insulates it physically separates the jelly roll from the covering. Then we need to, this is the jelly roll, the final jelly roll with the lids. Then it's kept inside the cup and they are sealed here. The lid part is sealed and the small opening will be there. Through this we put an electrolyte, the electrolyte will be filled through it and it is finally sealed to get a pouch cell. Now, when we do this, when the first pouch cell is formed, so what happens is, let's go back to the energy diagram of a freshly prepared cell. So in most of the cases, this diagram I think you would have seen earlier. The center portion of that, it gives the relative energy of highest occupied molecular orbit of the electrolyte and the lowest unoccupied molecular orbit of the electrolyte. And this is the anode chemical potential. The anode chemical potential to begin with will be higher than the LUMO, and the chemical potential of cathode will be smaller than the HOMO of the electrolyte. In this situation, what happens is there is a reduction of the electrolyte near the anode and the oxidation of the electrolyte near the cathode. Basically, oxidation is a loss of electrons during the reaction. So there is a loss of electrons from the electrolyte. Now for that, what we call is formation cycle. Basically, what we want to do for a stable lithium ion cell, this chemical potential of anode should be lower than the LUMO of the electrolyte, and the chemical potential of cathode should be higher than the HOMO of the electrolyte. So if that doesn't happen, the electrolyte basically dissociate, either it undergoes oxidation or reduction. So during the first cycle, that is what we do. We oxidize and reduce the electrolyte, and a very thin layer of like what we call solid electrolyte interface, that is solid electrolyte interface, usually called as SEI layer, forms on the graphite side or the anode side. Similarly, if the decomposition happens in the cathode side also, there is a stable solid electrode, the cathode side formation, it happens. Now these SEI, they are electronically insulators. So they are basically separates the further decomposition of the electrolyte solvents. But it allows the lithium to transport. This is what we require. So, but even in a very bad pouch cells or any of the cells, the gas evolution during that time can be very high. So you can see one of the swollen lithium ion pouch cell. Now this is just after the first cycling. If it forms like that, the safety of the cell will not be very good. So we need to remove the gas out of it and then again seal it, so that after the formation cycle, now what happens is, let me just give me 1 minute. I want to, yeah. So earlier, before the formation cycle, this is the anode side. The chemical potential of anode was higher than the LUMO, and the chemical potential of cathode was lower than HOMO. So now during charging, I want you to see the position of lithium on the anode layers. This is the cathode layer during the charging. And here with the voltage versus charge, what happens to the voltage as we de-intercalate the lithium from the cathode? The voltage keeps increasing. The reason here is this is the voltage difference between the chemical potential difference between the cathode and anode also changes due to the electrons transfer from the cathode to anode. Okay. Now you can see here, I would like to bring it little. Okay, I think few of the lithium electrons are not seen here. So when the lithium goes into the anode, you can see here the chemical potential of anode had increased and the chemical potential of the cathode has gone down. That is the reason why we get a increase in the voltage. This is what happens during the charging of the cell. And now during the discharging, just give me. Okay. Now during the discharging, the opposite happens. Again, the chemical potential of the anode decreases and the chemical potential of the cathode increases. That's why the voltage difference between the two, it decreases. This is what it happens during the discharging. Okay. Now, after the formation cycle, this is one example of a pouch cell, which is the cathode is NMC, that is lithium nickel manganese cobalt oxide, where nickel is 50% and 30% manganese, and cobalt is 20%. Now, the first cycle here, this one. If you start it, is around 600. In some cases, after the formation, the capacity is only the 500 milliampere hour. But after that, the charging and discharging, it remains, because the chemical potentials of the both cathode and anode are within the stability window of the electrolyte. This happens only after the formation cycle. And now if you run the charging, and that is, I want you to see this, just a minute. This graph over here, where you can see with the increase in when we move from this point to this point, the number of cycling is increasing. That is, we are charging and discharging n number of times. So now if you see this graph, the x-axis here gives you the cycle number and the y-axis gives the efficiency. That is, if the first cycle capacity, if you take it as 100, after 80 cycle, the capacity becomes only 80, or in this case around 75. Now, why this loss happens? I'm showing this one of the like not so good cells. So the loss in this capacity can come from various reasons. Now, if you see, this is the degradation mechanism of lithium ion cell. There are almost like around 20 to 30 parameters that can degrade the cell. I'll give few examples, few of the parameters here. Now let's take the left hand side, which is a representation of a anode. This circles here corresponds to one of the graphite particle, where they are made up of the layers of graphite layers. So in between, only the lithium ion should go, but then there is possibility that the whole solvent, which is solvent and the anions like LiPF6 can go in, and it can basically exploit, I mean the distance between the layers of graphite can increase. In turn, that can spoil the anode material. In addition, the copper is a copper current collector. It can also, there can be a possibly a corrosion of the current collectors. The binders can separate out, and there can be an island formation. That is, means some portion of the material may need not come in contact with or will not involve in electrochemically during the subsequent cycles. Or in case of anode, the transition metals, they can dissolve in the electrolytes. The reason is the electrolyte is LiPF6, that is, there is a fluorine in it. Now, as you know that fluorine, if there is a small percentage of moisture in the electrolyte, which is extremely difficult to take away, even the best quality of the electrolyte will have around 15 ppm level of moisture. So this LiPF6 reacts with the moisture and gives what is called HF. And HF can attack the surface of the active material, and the transition metal can dissolve in the electrolyte. So there are large number of parameters that can spoil the cell. So, okay, sorry, this, now as I told about the let's take a cross section of lithium ion cell. Now, if you take a cross-sectional SEM of the cell, you can see here that this is the large particles here is a LiFePO4 cathode. That is the center without any particles is an aluminum current collector. Again, this is the LiFePO4 separator, graphite, and the copper anode, and the again the graphite. As I told earlier, now if you see a particle here during the intercalation or deintercalation, that is during either charging or discharging of the cell, the electron from here, during charging, the electron from this particle, it has to travel all through this 100 micrometer thickness and go to the current collector. During the discharging process, the electron from the current collector, which comes from the outside the circuit, it has to travel all the way from here to this particle. So the conductivity of this whole electrode should be very good. And in addition, now the separator is soaked with the liquid electrolyte, and you can see here that there are small pores over this. All these pores becomes a reservoir for the electrolyte. So these pores are important. Unless you have enough quantity, pore percentage, we will not have a good cyclability, or what we call is the power. I mean how fast we can charge or how fast we can discharge. The rate capability of the cells will not be good. So what is the best morphology for a electrode? Now let's say open up this cell and see what is the best morphology that is required for a lithium ion cell. Again, that depends upon what is the best morphology. We can only tell depending upon the material. For graphite, the best morphology may be different. For the cathode with the lower electronic conductivity, the best morphology will be different. But one of the main thing is there should be a minimum agglomeration of the active material. So for example, and the conductive agent. So now you can see here that these are the representation of carbon black, and these crystals here is a active material. In this case, it is LiFePO4. Now, if the active materials are bound together and the carbon black are bound together, and there are very few places you have the pores, then what happens is electron can accumulate in this region. It will not transport, there will not be a charge transfer from the, electron transfer from the the carbon black, which is a conductive additive, to the active material. Similarly, the lithium should transfer, all these pores will be the reservoirs for electrolyte. So unless the distribution of these pores are uniform, every particle will not be involved in the charging and discharging process. Whereas in this kind of the right hand side configuration, what will happen is we have enough pores for the lithium electrolyte to go through. Similarly, the carbon black is uniformly distributed over the active material. And also we need to have a uniform conductive pathway for the carbon black to go from aluminum foil to the active material. So these are the main requirement of a electrode. And in addition to that, now if you have a higher amount of carbon black, then it is basically increasing the inactive component in the material. So gravimetric energy density comes down. Similarly, higher percentage of pores, gravimetric energy density comes down. So we need to have an optimum percentage of carbon black, which is uniformly distributed, and we need to have a very good distribution of pores for the electrolyte to go through. Now, how do we understand, or how do we study? So for example, each active material have different microstructure. For example, carbon black has very small particles of around 50 nanometers. LiFePO4, which is another cathode material, which has 100 to 200 nanometer particles, that is at the center. Whereas another cathode material, NMC, which is a agglomeration of small particles, which is around 5 to 10 micrometer. This agglomerate size is 5 to 10 micrometer. And graphite, on the other hand, it's a 10 micrometer single particle. So when we prepare a slurry out of any one of them, basically carbon black goes with all the three active material, we should optimize the preparation of the slurry. So slurry should be such that slurry of the binder, active material and carbon black, it should be such that what happens is when after preparing the slurry in a plant, we prepare a slurry of say around 5 liters, 10 liters, or in a actual plant it is thousands of liters. And we cannot coat that in one stretch, right? It takes little time for it to coat. So during that, the particles should not sediment. If the sedimentation takes place, then we will not have a good electrode coating. So we need to have a coagulation, a mild coagulation. So the coagulation of the particles in the slurry, so that it doesn't sediment. But then the coagulation should not be too much. If the coagulation is too much, we will not be in a position to coat it. Basically, this slurry, once put it on the current collector, we apply some shear pressure and the shear force, and then we spread it over that. So what should this coagulation should be mild, such that when we remove the force out after the coating, it again needs to be to come back. They have to, again, the active materials, they should bind together. So how do we characterize a slurry? We basically measure the viscosity of the slurry. Now, what is a viscosity? That is a resistance to flow, and a liquid can be characterized in terms of viscosity of the fluid. Now, you can consider a fluid when you apply force is made up of a large number of plates like this. So shear stress and shear strain can be calculated. So shear stress is basically represented by sigma, which is F by A, which is measured in Pascal. Shear strain is X, that is this displacement by the height, and that is shear strain. Shear rate or strain rate is d shear strain by shear stress. Now the shear viscosity or dynamic viscosity is basically the ratio between sigma and shear rate. And also there are many types of slurries. They can be basically the classification of the slurry, it depends upon what is the behavior of the slurry when a particular shear rate is applied. The main thing is Newtonian, that is you apply a shear, the stress keeps, with the increase in the shear rate, the shear stress increases. And there are pseudoplastics, that is, it is a, okay, let me go first to the plastic one. So we need a particular amount of shear for it to flow, unless that is called the yield stress. Until the yield stress reaches, that is basically, for example, carbon black, they are agglomerated together in a solution of PVDF NMP mixture. So we need some force for it to slide. So that is the yield stress. And then in the plastic one, this is how it's not linear even after the yield stress, but whereas in this, it is linear after the yield stress. Why does a shear thinning occurs? That is, shear thinning is after the yield stress. What happens is, as we increase the shear, just give me 1 minute. Shear thinning is a result of microstructural rearrangement occurring in the plane of the applied shear. This can happen in binders, where their binders are basically single line materials, and then it can happen in carbon blacks, where they are small particles of around 20 to 30 nanometer. So now this is the microstructure at rest. So when we don't apply a shear, this is how the microstructure of the material. And then when we apply the shear, the polymer chains disentangle and stretches. That is why the thinning happens. It can easily flow afterwards, after it reaches. So yield stress is basically the minimum force that is required to change from this structure to this structure, and after that it flows. Similarly, in case of small spheres, during the resting time, this is the microstructure, and this is what happens after it causes the yield stress. Now, this is the carbon black, which is one of the main ingredient of the slurry of the cathode and the anode material. The viscosity or the rheology of the slurry can be very easily tailored or tuned with the help of the carbon black. How the carbon black is distributed in the structure, it determines the rheology in many cases, other than the binder. Now, basically, the carbon black, it is, when we purchase, it is an agglomerate of 1 to 100 micrometer size. And by applying force, we can de-agglomerate them and make it as agglomerates of 85 to 500 nanometers, which are made up of nodules of 10 to 300 nanometers. This is not possible to separate out these single particles separately because of the very small size of carbon black. The minimum size what we can get is the aggregate size. Now, how do we study? Now, let's say I told the process of slurry preparation. First, we mix the NMP with the PVDF, and then we see how its rheological behavior. That is, as we apply a shear rate, we can see that the shear stress keeps increasing. This behavior is called Newtonian behavior. These kind of slurries will sediment. But for it to sediment, there is nothing solid particles. It's a complete dissolution of PVDF in NMP. After that, if you add carbon black to it, which is very small quantity we add, only like around 5 to 10% in the total material of the solid particles will be the carbon black. Even a couple of grams in 50 ml or 100 ml will suddenly increase the yield stress. You can see that until you apply a share of this much, it doesn't flow. This is just in the NMP. Now, when you have a carbon black in a PVDF and NMP, again the shear stress, the yield stress increases further, and the shear stress versus shear rate is no more the linear behavior. It is called, it is a nonlinear behavior. I think this, I'll go a little faster because we have only 30 minutes, right? So what we do is now, if you when we prepare a slurry, first we add a carbon black to PVDF NMP mixture, and then we add LiFePO4. The microstructure becomes extremely poor. What happens is, some places the carbon black is separately agglomerated and LiFePO4 is separately agglomerated. This kind of structures are not good for the electrochemical performance of a cell. You can see here the small particles. This is an SEM micrograph of the electrode. The small particles here are carbon black, and the larger ones are LiFePO4. You can, especially here, you can see there is no carbon black here at all, whereas the carbon black are agglomerated in some places somewhere here. Now, I'll not go to this. Okay, let's see the electrochemical performance of these materials. Now, where we have added carbon black first to NMP PVDF mixture, and then we have added LiFePO4, we have seen the electrochemical performance of this material with the varying concentration of the active material, that is LiFePO4. You can see here, in the A, you can see here 85 corresponds to 85% of the electrode is active material LiFePO4, and 13% is carbon black, and 2% is PVDF. And in some places it is 83, 15 and 2, 85, 11 and 4, and 83, 13, 4. You can see here, you can see different charging and discharging curves of these cells. These are 4 different cells with a common active material, that is LiFePO4. But only the difference is electrode composition has been changed. In this case, the LiFePO4 composition is 85, whereas in this is 83. The blue line, the blue charging curve, the one that is the voltage increases during charging and the voltage decreases during discharging at a low current rate, which is called done at 0.1 C. The meaning of 0.1 C is, once we prepare a cell, if you say, for example, 30 milliampere hour cell we prepared, the full nominal capacity of a cell is 30 milliampere hour. Now, if you discharge that in 10 hours, that is 0.1 C. Whereas if you discharge that in 1 hour, it is 1 C. So you are applying a higher current when you charge or discharge it at 1 C. Now, if you charge it or discharge it 1/6 of an hour, it is 6 C. So as this number here increases from 0.1, 1, 4 and 6, the current what we apply also increases. So now I want you to see here the blue line. The blue line is where the charging and discharging has been taken place at 0.1 C, where the current is low. There's not much difference between all the 4 here. All of them give a similar capacity. The x-axis here gives the capacity per gram. So it's around 160 in all the 4 samples. Now you can see here during the charging and the discharging takes place in a similar voltage. That is, both of them takes place 3 point something like 3.5 or 3.4. and the difference in the average charging voltage and discharging voltage is minimum. Now let's go to the red color one. Here we increase the current from, the charging rate from 0.1C to 1C rate. You can see here the charging happens at a slightly higher voltage and the discharging happens slightly at lower voltage. So what is the meaning of this is you're charging at high voltage and discharging at lower voltage. So the efficiency of the cell goes down. You're losing some portion of the energy. Now that is minimum in case of 83-13-4, whereas you increase the active material to 85, reduce the carbon content to 11%, then you can see that now here in the second graph where the laser pointer is there, charging happens at still higher voltage, discharging happens at still lower voltage. So the loss in energy is more in this case. Now let's come to the green one. The green one, here it is at 4C. And yeah, again, the charging happens at high voltage. It is way higher than what it happened at 1C. And it is discharging is at a voltage way lower than what it happened at 1C. Now, in this case, that is on the third graph here, third layer here, you can't see that graph at all because it doesn't charge and discharge at 4C at all. Whereas this one, it happens, but the increase in, the loss in the energy is very high. And in this case, the loss in the energy is way high. So because of that, if you see how much is the specific capacity we get for a given C rate. Now the ones here to the right hand side graph, it gives specific capacity versus cycle number. Here what we do is the first 5 cycles, we charge it and discharge at 0.1C, that is this number here. All of them have a similar capacity. Now when we charge it at 1C, now the loss in capacity is high, and then you can see up to 6C or 5C here. The 5 at 5C, the 83-13-4, it you can see get some capacity, whereas not the other two. So basically, with the increase in the current or the charging rate and discharging, the capacity goes down. The reason for that is the interface impedance between various parts. As I told that there are large number of interfacing in a cell. Here what we have focused is the interface between, the charge transfer between the active material to the active material. What is the resistance? What is the impedance for the charge transfer? The charge here is lithium ion and the electron to takes place from the electrolyte and the carbon black to the active material. You can see here this point here, the extrapolated first semicircle of a impedance spectra. It keeps increasing with the lower carbon content. You can see here it's very high. The charge transfer resistance is very high, which is not good because we need the charge transfer resistance as low as possible. Okay, now so for that what we did is we mixed the carbon black and NMP together. Carbon black and LiFePO4 together in the solid form. We mix them, we call it as pre-mixing. We pre-mix them together and put that in the electrolyte. Then what happens is the carbon black in the solid mixing itself, it covers the LiFePO4 as can be seen from the microstructure. I'll not go into the details of this. Okay, now let's go to the SEM images of that, where we can scan the composition of the electrode. The A corresponds to the one where carbon black and LiFePO4, which is active material, which is not added sequentially added to the liquid solvent. Whereas in this case, carbon black and LiFePO4 are pre-mixed and then they are added to the PVDF NMP. We don't see any segregation here. Whereas in the A, that is the first row, you can see that some places the concentration of carbon black is high. In some places, concentration of phosphor is high. So this is not a good type of mixing. Because of that, okay, let me not go there. Now let us just see the efficiency of the cell. The one on the top is where we added carbon black first and LiFePO4 next, which is a sequential mixing. And the down portion is where we added them. I mean, first solid mixing happens. There is carbon black is mixed with the LiFePO4. We can see here that when we pre-mix, the loss in the energy is very less. Loss in the energy, we basically see what is the difference in the voltage of charging and discharging. Take one common, the color. Let's say, for example, let's take the green one. The green here shows the green on the top, where is done through sequential mixing, where we add carbon first and then LiFePO4. We can see the loss in the energy or specific capacity is very high, because charging happens at a high voltage and discharging happens at a very low voltage. Compared to the similar line here, the green color one in the down, where we first pre-mixed carbon black and LiFePO4, the loss in the energy is low. So which can be seen here also to the right top graph, which shows the black small circles. It shows the premixed the energy or the specific capacity at the different charging rates and discharging rates. We here where we premix, where the mixing is very good. Mixing is good means in an electrode, the carbon black and LiFePO4, they are uniformly distributed. Carbon black covers uniformly LiFePO4, far better than this first case, where the charging or discharging doesn't happen at high C rates. Again, I want you to see the impedance curve here. Basically, the simple meaning of impedance is we can, I want you to see only this point here. Okay, it can give us, the impedance spectra can give us a lot detailed analysis and give a lot of information. But for this discussion, I want to see only these 2 points here. Now, the black one where the mixing is not good, and the red, the black one is a mixing is good, and the red one is mixing is not good. When the mixing is not good for a given material, it's a commercial material, commercial LiFePO4. Intrinsic properties are very good in both the samples. Just the mixing alone, just the electrode alone, where mixing is not good, the charge transfer resistance is very high, around 120 to 130 130 ohms. Whereas in this case, it is only half of it. And because of that, what happens? Now let's see, you have heard about the cyclic, sorry, am I able to, are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes, madam. Yes.
So what happens? Yeah, because it showed me internet is poor. Okay. Yeah. Now let us see what happens is a capacity retention with cycle number. For an electric vehicle, you need almost a cell to, or the battery to come as long as the car can come, right? So you will be charging 2000 times, 3000 times charging and discharging. But now, okay, this is only a small cell level I'm talking about, where only one parameter has been optimized. Now you can see that in some cells it comes up to 250 for a given same material, and some of them goes bad so bad. The reason is, if you open up after 100 cycles, you open up and see what happens is, in one of the cell, there is no connection between particle to particle. The big cracks, you can see that since these materials are soaked in the electrolyte, it's basically because of the liquid, it can move, it can segregate separately. So you can see that there are large cracks over here, which is minimum in this case. These are the ones which determines the cyclic stability. So this is what I was talking about, the interface between the active materials and inactive materials If it is very stable, then we get a better cyclic stability. I want you to know here that this is only one parameter I am talking. There are n number of parameters what decides the cycle number. Okay, now I think I have only 12 minutes to go, right? So I'll just briefly go to the next one. So the liquid electrolyte, since it uses organic solvents, they are the stability is very poor, especially for regions like India where temperature can go very high. And you know that if you park your scooter outside, when you are the car outside, when you go inside, you cannot touch it, right? So all these controlling mechanism of the cell, it works only when the engine is running. So there is always a possibility that when a liquid electrolyte cells are used, they can have problem with the safety, especially with respect to temperature. There is a huge issue with liquid electrolyte. And till now, whatever the batteries that are available in the market for large scale production are liquid cell, okay, liquid electrolyte cell. So in long run, what we need to do is, one is the mileage of the batteries should increase, or the mileage of the car should increase. The other one is we need to replace the liquid electrolyte by solid state electrolyte. Now, this gives us a comparison between the liquid cells and the solid cell. Liquid cells, liquid lithium ion cells are inexpensive because the processing is very easier. It's not easier, it is easier compared to solid state cells. And this is a flexible separator, so the manufacturability is good. Whereas in solid state cell, you can feel that, right? It is always difficult to manufacture a 100-meter electrode in a solid state, whereas in a liquid state it is easier. Now in liquid cell, we need a porosity where the liquid electrolyte can go into the electrode, whereas in solid state electrodes, we need to have minimum porosity as possible. Okay, another advantage of going from liquid cells to the solid cell is, you may recall the band diagram where lithium and lithium's redox potential is with the lithium metal, you get a higher voltage of the cell. Whereas lithium ion, where we use graphite, we get a lower voltage. So basically the energy density lowers when we use graphite instead of lithium metal. But why we cannot use lithium metal is, with liquid electrolyte, we have a lot of safety problem. Even with the graphite, we have safety problems. Whereas with the lithium metal, there is a possibility of dendrite growth, and all this can happen, and it can give rise to the short circuit. Whereas this kind of problem can be overcome by use of the solid state electrolyte. Solid state electrolyte does not allow the lithium metal to grow from the anode to the cathode. Therefore, instead of lithium ion batteries, we can directly go for lithium metal batteries. I think, yeah, with that, yeah, let me just show the difference between the the difference in the microstructure of a liquid electrolyte battery and the solid state electrolyte battery. In solid state electrolyte battery, there are two things. One is inorganic electrolyte, inorganic solid electrolyte. Another one is a polymer solid electrolyte. But there are issues with the inorganic solid electrolyte and the polymer. Inorganic solid electrolyte, main problem is manufacturability. With the solid powders, getting a thick pellet, the thin pellet is very difficult. Whereas in the polymer electrolyte, the polymer solid electrolytes, they are not good ionic conductor compared to inorganic electrolytes. So we need to have a mixture or the hybrid of inorganic and the polymer electrolyte. So this is a hybrid electrolyte. Basically, what we have is here the center portion of this. It's a hybrid can happen inorganic electrolyte and the liquid electrolyte. So here what happens is we reduce the quantity of liquid electrolyte so that the safety concerns goes down. but still you will have a safety issue. So only a percentage of liquid electrolyte usage is reduced. Now another hybrid type of electrolyte is inorganic electrolyte. Sorry, this let's not see here. The rightmost, the right down one here, this one, please look into that. Here the electrolyte is made up of inorganic electrolyte and the polymer electrolyte. This will be a good combination because we are not going to use any liquid electrolyte. So the safety wise it will be good. And the inorganic electrolyte gives high conductivity. Polymer electrolyte gives manufacturability. But still all the lithium ion cells, which are completely solid state, they are still in medical uses or something like very small capacity ones. Few microampere cells are only present right now in all solid state batteries. Let go. So the overall the research that needs to take place for complete solid state batteries are this is the roadmap. With the technology, the first will be the increasing the voltage up to by 2025. The voltage of the cells can go from 4.2 to 4.5 volts. And then instead of lithium ion batteries, maybe moving to lithium sulfur and lithium air. And in the cathode, the materials can change in this way. And the electrolyte can move from gel polymer electrolyte to complete solid state electrolyte. And with this, I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And group member, our group members, Chandra, Shashikala, Vasu, Kumari, Mahender, and Nikhil, I would like to thank for all the works they have done. And I would like to thank my collaborators, Professor Vinay Chuvakar from IIT Bombay, Professor Jyoti Seth of IIT Bombay, and Dr. Raman of CFCT RCI. And I also would like to acknowledge our regional director, Dr. Gopalan, Dr. Prakash, and DST for the financial support, and CAM group members, and Dr. Pavan for giving me an opportunity to give a presentation. And our director, who was full encouragement for us to carry out all type of work, unfortunately is no more. And so I would like to thank him. It was a big loss for us. And this talk I would like to dedicate to Dr. Padmanabhan, who is the director and whom we lost this month. Thank you, and all. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, ma'am. You have covered a lot of things in the short period of time, from parts of lithium-ion battery to the characteristics of the electrode. So it was a very wonderful talk. We will open for question and answer session for 10 to 15 minutes. If anybody has any question, they can ask. We have some questions in chat box. I'll read out.
Okay.
There is a question from Suraj. For certain capacity of current output, we take specific quantity of active materials. In case of carbon black, what is the basic criteria to decide its quantity required per unit current output?
Okay, carbon black here is a inactive material. It doesn't undergo any electrochemical changes. Okay, carbon black here is used only as a electronic conductive additive. Minimum is the better. But we need to have a percolation of electron from the current collector to the active material. This is used only for that. So in a commercial battery, what we go for high energy applications, it's around 2 to 3%, whereas high power application, where high energy is, for example, if you take a car, you can go for with one charging, you can go for a longer drive. High power is basically helps you in accelerating from lower, from the, like what is the rate of change in the velocity, that is acceleration, that basically decided by the power of the cell. So for high power application, we use little higher carbon black.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he has another question, ma'am.
Yeah.
Reduction of agglomeration of carbon black possible with LiFePO4 only, or it is possible with other grade of active materials also?
No, it doesn't reduce. Carbon black, we choose carbon black it is chemically stable in the operating window. It is just a inactive material here, which is basically used to conduct the electron from the current collector to the active material. And carbon black should not be involved in any of the, because if it is involved, then the characteristics of the cell goes bad. It should be chemically inert. And all active materials, we use some percentage of carbon black or similar to carbon black to conduct the electron from the current collector to the active material.
Okay, I think it has answered your question, Suraj. So any other question? If you have any other question, you can unmute and ask directly. Is there any other question? Again, I think Suraj has one more question, ma'am.
Yeah,
Which polymer material is used for internal coating of aluminum foil?
That I don't know. If it is a commercial one, they don't give us the full information. When we buy itself, we buy the polymer coated aluminum foils for the cup, not for the current collector. Current collector is just aluminum foil where its conductivity should be very good. But the cup, which is a cover of the cell, full cell, there it has to be internally coated by polymer. We buy the polymer coated ones.
Okay. So any other question? Okay, there is one more question from Suraj. I think Suraj, you can unmute and ask. You might have if you have any follow-up question, it will be easy for the madam to ask. Okay, he has written, it is understood. Okay.
Okay.
I think there are no more questions. So thank you very much, Dr. Sahana ji, for delivering such a wonderful lecture in our FDP.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think if there are no questions, we can end the session here.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it was very nice having you to deliver a lecture, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, and that's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll end the lecture here, and we will join again at 11 o'clock. We have second session at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
So, okay.
Okay.
Bye then.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.